Welcome back to a new season of One Up Podcasts. This is Garnet Lee. It's great to have you all listening. I've got some folks down here to talk about game length today. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
I'm Kathleen Sanders. I work over at EGM.
And I'm Dana Jungaward, and I work at OPM.
I'm Sean Elliott, previews editor at Computer Gaming World magazine.
Okay, so it's been a busy month for me already. I was down at CES, and I got to do the guns thing, which was in the One Up show, all that kind of deal. It's got me thinking about Black because I really like Black a lot, and I've been watching Scooter play the final build over in the OPM area. And he's been working on his review, and one of the points, there's a lot of points he brought up, just to be fair, one of the points he brought up is game length. And this is like a subject I've been on for a long time because it's interesting to see how many disagreements we get over, okay, is it important how long a game is? You guys are here because you kind of have different opinions, so how important is it for a game to be long or short? How much does it matter, and should it figure into reviews?
Well, I mean, for me, I actually prefer short games because, I mean, it's like we all get busy, we all have lives, we have jobs, we have significant others in a lot of cases, and I like games that I actually have a chance of finishing. Because if a game goes on too long, you get caught up, another good game comes in, you start playing that instead. So I actually prefer it when things stay on the shorter side.
For me, obviously, I mean, it probably doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it, which is it's mostly important that the game is good. And if it's good, I want it to be long because I don't want it to end. You know, I haven't played Black yet. I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm sad to hear that it's short because it does seem like, for me, the better a game is, the shorter it'll end up sometimes. But I am glad when they're short when they suck. And I usually mention that because...
So wait a minute.
Especially when I have to play them for review because then it's like, oh, thank God, at least it's over. But yeah.
Nothing like a 40-hour piece of crap review.
We've all been through one of those at least, right?
Yeah.
Without naming names, we all can think of one really quickly.
Oh, no, let's name names. No, I'm kidding.
Chime in. I'm with Dana, and for the most part, I'm for shorter games because I spend the majority of my time playing multiplayer games, and a single multiplayer game can last me for 3 to 6 months. And anytime a single-player game is going to take my game playing time away, it's got to be really, really good or short enough so that I can do it in bits and pieces there, come back to it like a few days later, remember where I'm at, remember what's going on, not come back and say, okay, I think I was like in step 5 of a 12-step puzzle. What do I need to do? Do I have to go on GameFAQs to get caught up again? Recent examples, Condemned for 360, before it came out, the rumors were, here's this terribly short game. You know, I heard estimates as low as 6 hours. And at face, when I heard that, it sounded completely ridiculous. You're like, what the heck? You know, who's going to play this?
$60 game.
Right, for 6 hours. And then I got it, and I still haven't finished it. And it's just crazy because I was actually known, you know, as like someone who just clips through games, especially first-person games, faster than, you know, the average person. So I started playing this game, and it was so intense that I'd only play a level in a single session. By the time I was done, I was like, okay, I can't take any more of this tonight. I'll come back to it. And then I'll do another level the next day. And then doing it that way, the experience was just right over a course of like 6 or 7 nights, you know, going all the way through it in these little bits and pieces. I appreciated it more. I didn't feel that things were getting as repetitive as other people have if I, you know, say if I had played it all in one sitting or something.
Right. Yeah, I played it for review, and so I had to play it like over a weekend, and it was short for me, and it got unbelievably repetitive, and I didn't like it very much at all.
Okay, but was it that you didn't like it because of the game, or was it that you didn't like it because...
I didn't like it because of the game.
Okay, so see...
Yeah, and I think that actually factors into the whole length of game thing for us, too. I mean, we have a completely different perspective because we're having... Like, sometimes I know they don't get us the games, like, with a decent amount of time to beat it. Like, if we could take our time with it, if we did have, like, a few weeks before we had to turn the review in, and we could play it the way you've been playing Condemned, maybe No, I don't think I would have felt differently about it because my complaints about Condemned would have been true if I had played it over 2 weeks or over the weekend that I did. But
lengthwise is totally different whether you're reviewing it or playing it for yourself, right?
Well, and one of the things about long games is like so many of them are artificially long. It's really, really tough to get a game that's, you know, I would say 20 hours is the max where you don't start getting through this like cycle. And that's not to say you can't have a repetitive short game. But like the really good, you know, like God of War, Kathleen and I were talking about this earlier, and that was my favorite game of the year because you weren't going back into these same places over and over. Like I didn't feel like I was, all right, okay, I've done this before. I have to go slug through some new monsters.
Step and fetch quest.
Right.
Like, go here and be told to go there.
Right. And I like games like Untold Legends and everything like that will take like 20 hours. But it's, I mean, let's face it, it's like about maybe, it's the same thing over and over.
That's so key. Is like you've got ideal gameplay length, duration determining content rather than content determining the other. And then in those scenarios, it becomes clear. You can see, okay, this game was done, and then at some point their testers went through it and they clipped into it 2 hours below what they were expecting. So they took assets they already had, added a few extra feet to corridors here and there, decided that say for example you're supposed to get a seed from some farmer, and whereas before he would say, well, I'm not going to give you a seed unless you go return my cat that's in the field to me. Now they make it so that to get the cat, you've got to do, this and that and the other thing.
And then they change the color of the monsters to green and give them an extra eye, and then it's
like,
woo,
and then they
new level.
12 more hit points. And then they give,
So if we're talking about game length, we're talking about story-driven games, and how long can a story be before it starts becoming like rolling over on top of itself? You're like, God, I've already done this. All right, I know where it's going.
Right. Yeah, that's the fetch quest sort of thing. Whenever any of that stuff is like artificially petted
But when they do put in a good story, when they do take the time to give it like a spine, basically, and it wasn't like Teddy down in coding, he writes a lot of really great Doctor Who fan fiction. We should just have him do the script, which is kind of, I'm pretty sure what happened with Condemned, because that whole story was so unbelievably stupid. You collect dead birds. Like, what?
I always thought maybe that was like some kind of like play on making fun of the whole collection system. You think?
It was not nearly that insightful or intelligent. No.
I haven't played enough of it to know, but I thought that was pretty wacky. I was like, wow, dead birds.
It's wacky for like, oh, isn't this creepy? Look at the dead bird. What?
Okay, so what's the difference? So maybe that's maybe collectible stuff goes into replay, right? Maybe does collectability go into replay?
I think what goes into replay is like what Sean was saying about multiplayer. Like, that's a whole different thing. Like the Halo games are one of the few like first-person shooter single player games that I actually really enjoy.
Right.
Especially co-op. And then the multiplayer is awesome too. There are a few games that have that kind of replayability. KOTOR did it. Because you had that. For me, the replayability, there's no multiplayer, obviously, but the replayability, because I had to go back once I finished, the good way. I had to go back and finish the bad way, which was a little bit more
those
fun.
Those are great examples. I think what Garnet's getting at is like when a collectible is put in the game to artificially extend the duration.
Yeah, right. Or make you want to go back.
Condemned is a perfect example. It's
clear
when I was playing, I just didn't care. If there was a dead bird at my feet, I'd grab it, but I had no
you weren't searching.
drive because I didn't feel that it was going to do anything. Right. It wasn't going to further the story. It wasn't going to enhance my experience, and it was very clear that this is there so that when I finish this and I say, oh, that was 8 hours, I need to get more of my money's worth, I can turn it on again, and the justification would be there.
Well,
all the form arguments and stuff.
But
it's not good. That's no real incentive for me, but I'm saying that's the logic behind it. And I don't
if
think
collecting the stuff like unlocks some really cool mode,
exactly.
Or,
like if it unlocks if it. That's the thing that'll catch me in games too and make it a little bit replayable is like if you can upgrade differently or if you can change like your skill sets and things like that.
Like completing black and hard level. I mean, there are like various things, but like I know that because Scooter finished the game pretty quickly and like we talked about, but they're actually all still back in it and they're replaying it again on hard and and they've been back in this thing. It's like they're in the cube, the group cube, any chance that they get, and they're passing the controller around and fighting for it. So obviously there's some it's like
right. So is it really a short game? Because if they want to go back and play it again, is it still count? I mean, does replay count against length?
Yeah.
There's two arguments there. I mean, you could say on the one hand, oh well, I finished the game, I've done the story, da 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 da. Now I want to go back and play it. So did they do it the right length?
You want to unlock the costumes. You want to dress in the cow outfit. You want to do whatever. You know.
I'm gonna differ from you guys on this. Whereas enhancing your character, unlocking new weapons or powers or costumes or something are completely meaningless to me. The same as finding the bird.
Oh, come on. You mean you didn't go back in Resident Evil 1 and go for any of the costumes?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Here's my case.
You are so lying.
No, here's my case.
I can believe that of Sean.
Garnet's leaving this process.
You didn't play Resident Evil 1, then?
I was ready to try Silent Hill at that point and then try something else. Yeah. But no, for me, those things, I mean, I see a lot of times games review better than other ones because they've got some token and we call it, an RPG element or something, although to me it's not really role-playing. It's
That's
just,
really a PR term,
you
isn't
can
it?
build up, right, you could just build up some aspect of your stats or something, and that to me is like, it doesn't make a game fun. And a lot of times you get like these games where it's fundamentally a very boring and repetitive beat 'em up where you're hitting A to do something and there's a button for a magic move, but because you're like, I can make it so that I can do my magic move twice as fast, or my axe does twice the damage, that keeps a lot of people there. For me, it doesn't. Whereas like a game like Half-Life 2 or something, I'll play it at a rate and I'll know that I'm not playing it again for to look for secrets or anything, although they might be there. I'm playing it just because I enjoyed myself so thoroughly on the first time through that I just want to do it again, in the way I'd watch a movie a second time or something. And that to me is key. But if the first pass through is that enjoyable, it doesn't really matter to me how long it is. I mean, after a certain point,
Right.
I could play a 5-hour game and be happy, and that's why.
See, I'm a completionist.
Yeah,
I'd like to get
that's the
everything.
thing. Like, if it's good and it's 5 hours, I've paid $50 for it. I'm going to feel ripped off. And the replayability that you were talking about, when it crosses a line for me, like, I won't go back just to collect a bird, just to get like a different ending or something, because really,
or
you
concept
can,
art.
yeah.
Oh my god!
Oh, that is the dumbest thing. Who looks at that?
I hate that.
That's so retarded.
Just if you want to throw it on a disc or whatever, that's fine, but don't make it unlockable.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
It's just like, ooh, there's a painting.
Yeah, it's like you get that rush. You're like, oh man, I totally completed this, and you open it up, and you're like, wow.
And it's like a music video.
Yeah, and it's like,
right,
or the ones that look like something that some high school kid did in art.
Right.
Like,
50 Cent Bulletproof. You're supposed to keep playing so you can unlock 50 Cent's music videos. Now, it's like, what's wrong with the picture? You're 50 Cent, and you're fighting, and you're gonna kill an extra 50 guys so you can get a copy of your own single. You know, like
that you can go watch online.
Are we really
right
analyzing the 50 Cent game for its logic?
But something you said, I agree about.
No, what I was saying, I'm sorry. Replayability for me isn't just collecting. Like with games like Morrowind or like I'd said KOTOR, the replayability is in that the experience is different. That you can make choices that will, and you can complete the game, 2 different ways and play 2 different games.
At least.
With Morrowind,
you can even try and walk down the middle, and that even makes it more different.
Yeah, and like that to me is brilliant, and I don't understand why there aren't more games like that.
As long as the experience changes rather than the cutscenes that tie it together.
Right, and I think that does. I mean, with the examples I gave, like. I mean, it's definitely, and when it's open-ended like that, and they give me a choice, like when the game respects me enough as a gamer to say, okay, we're going to let them choose. They could blaze through it, finish this game in 10 hours, or they can go and explore every single nook and cranny of this world and spend 50 hours.
And the artificial, but only have that in there if you're actually doing that, because the artificial choices, like I'm going
Some
back
people
to
like step and
Champions,
fetch.
where the second time that they gave you like the choice to be good or evil, and it didn't make any difference. It made none at all, and so it was like this, people would like go back into replay as the other side, and it was like, okay, it's the same thing. It's just now I'm labeled as bad instead of good. I'm still fighting the exact same monster.
And you always wanted to be a bad girl, right?
Oh yeah, you know that.
So is it length then, or is it value? Because what I'm hearing from you is more value.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, they're going to make these games so expensive. I mean, and I'm not saying like then then put the step in and fetch quest in so that it fattens it up. Because if the game's 8 hours, but 3 hours of it were shitty, I'm still going to say that was a short game and it was shitty. Like it's going to have 2 strikes against it.
So let's say I'm designing a game, and I've got like this idea for whatever my game is, and I've got like 7 hours of concentrated gameplay. If I'm stretching it, you're going to see through that.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But let's say right now we're looking at it strictly in terms of the game changing rather than the price changing. What if you change the price, and which is why I'm a huge advocate for episodic content, which we're going to start seeing on PC and then now on the 360 with Sin episodes, where the issue isn't so much the length of the game, but your value. And so it's addressing that by saying, hey, this is really, if you think this is $15 worth of game, that's what we're going to charge you, and we're going to give you this small piece. But then in order to recoup, say on their side, if you're only charging $15 for a game you develop, your budget for development is probably going to be insignificant. But so what you do then is you parcel it out over the course of a year in different chapters where you have more time to think about individual segments of it and make sure that there really is no filler in the whole thing, and you're recouping your costs for the development of your engine and your assets and all these things, but you're doing it over a longer period of time. And for me as an older gamer, that fits my lifestyle more, Whereas, like, you know, when we were all younger, we've all got our favorite game we can mention. But for me, it was like Castlevania on the Nintendo Entertainment System, where there was no save, there was no password at the time, and I would leave the console on overnight, turn the TV off, and come back to try again and again on Grim Reaper or whatever. And at this point in my life now, I can try a boss, and if it kills me like 2 or 3 times, and if I'm not reviewing it, I mean, we can't cuss on this program, but I cuss, and
well, you can't. But whatever. I mean, dude, I've got that same rule. I put that rule in place. Like for me, 3 or 4 years ago, I've got like this frustration level. It's like, okay, one time frustrated, I'll come back to it, but the second time, it's like whatever. You know what?
It's not fun. Yeah, it's not like it's one thing if it's like, okay, I know that I see what I need to do, but yeah, if you're just like blindly going back in there and dying over and over, it's not fun.
Nope.
Yeah.
And my life is too short. There are too many games out there.
Few games will orchestrate a challenge where it's very clear that they give you the incentive to tackle it, and they get away with making it extraordinarily difficult. A lot of times the Metal Gear bosses are like this or something.
Dude, Ninja Gaiden
are easy. Right, Ninja Gaiden.
Does that count for length? I mean, does that count for value? What do you think?
Ninja Gaiden is a sore subject with me because I did defeat that game.
Did you solve
You should
it?
see the look on her
I
face,
did
guys.
solve
It's
that
like
game
so
too,
serious.
But it was because somebody told me that I wouldn't because it was too hard.
Okay.
And they said,
a girl.
Yeah, and they said you won't like it. It's too hard.
But once you
You'll
know how to
give
get, once you know how to go through Ninja Gaiden, it's not a long game. But when you're going through it the first time, you know, there's like this learning curve to it. It's like a burn. You know, you get like to a certain point, and you're like beating your head against the wall, and then eventually you come to the realization, wow, you know what? If I actually learn how to play this game, I can rock at it.
I guess for Ninja Gaiden, for me personally, it was just hard. Whereas like going back to some of the older games from when we were young, the Mega Man games for me, I always really loved because they were hard, but they were a challenge. Like you had to be perfect, you know? It wasn't just hard for hard's sake. And I felt like Ninja Gaiden was kind of hard for hard's sake. It wasn't so much a challenge as it was like, oh my God, this is hard, you know?
Right. Now, see, I like easy games, but maybe it's just because I'm lazy. Because
like, what did you think of the very last boss in God of War?
See, it was fine, but I was playing it on easy. I'm also a big advocate of easy and difficulty
levels. Just
the
quality of your game. The better your game is fundamentally, the harder you can, the more of a challenge it can pose.
Yeah.
But conversely, like in addition to saying that the very worst experiences we've had reviewing games are crappy long games, but crappy hard games are.
Oh man!
Yeah.
A crappy hard and long game is not just a matter of, okay, I don't recommend this, but you personally hate it. You have a vendetta.
Draws out your bile.
Right.
So ultimately, do you worry about like $1 per hour worth of gameplay?
So, yeah, I mean, I think about that.
Are we naive? Because as reviewers, since we're playing games all day, are we like turned off? Do you think people out there worry about that?
It's really, really hard for me to assess that because we are all really spoiled. Because we even if we don't own it, we can borrow anything pretty much for free. So I'd like to say it wouldn't, but
I'm recently out of the civilian sector, and I'm happy now because I have a lot more free time
and a lot more cash.
And a lot more cash because I did pretty well. There's a lot you can do as far as like exchanging games, used games. Blockbuster Video's always running these deals, EB Games. But I had to invest a lot of personal energy in that, and I have had a lot more free time just because I'm not like searching Cheap Ass Gamers for like, what's Target selling this at right now? You know, so I mean, and so yeah, that's always been, and I remember that still. Like that's still in my heart when I'm reviewing games. Like, okay, this game is going to cost $60. You know, no.
That also goes back to it's an aspect of the age thing, I think, too. Obviously, for us, 60 isn't the same as when you're 14.
Right.
And I can imagine that it holds true still for a number of, our readers and One-Up's audience that if they are, 13 or something and they get a game, maybe they get a new game every 2 or 3 months. When they get one, they definitely want to get more value out of it than we do, where we can constantly get something else. And I think they're also going to be more lenient in terms of how they appreciate something. If they get one game, it's going to be in their interest to like what they get.
Yeah,
more
that's
so
a good
than,
point. Yeah.
But then you could argue that's also the beauty of a short game because it's an easy one to rent and take home. I mean, like Black, like it's a good game. You should definitely go out and play it, but it would be a good rental, I would say.
How many hours?
See, on the other end, I'd argue the other side.
Scoot made it through in 7 hours.
No multiplayer?
Nope.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But I think it's like, I mean, do you buy DVD movies? Because this is a game that I could see myself totally just sitting down anytime I was like just wanted 10, 15 minutes of just wanting destruction and hopping in and playing.
Well, then maybe, and then maybe if you like it that much and you're like, wow, this is something I could replay over and over, then you go out and buy it. maybe
True.
you decide then. But like a lot of these, I mean,
Just like you do with a movie.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, okay, I rented it and I liked it, and so I think this is something I want to own.
And we're kind of back at the beginning, which is, after all that, should we include value and stuff like that when we review games? How much does it matter?
I factor that in.
We will do that. I mean, if it's like there are some games where it's like, it's okay, but it's only $20. So, that could be like a half star. It's like, you're wavering between the 3 and the 2.5, but you're like, it's cheap, so, why not?
Since it varies from user to user so much, what I'll do is if I see the game, it's 5 or 6 hours or something, and it personally doesn't bother me, I'll make sure that I explain that the game is this long and it doesn't bother me, and then someone can immediately say, and then respond accordingly. 5 hours is completely
like I'm going to wait for that to be cheaper or wait for it used.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll be curious to see what people put as feedback up after this. Maybe post in our forums or underneath the thread in the One Up podcast clubs. You guys have anything you want to leave them with? That's about it.
No, I don't.
All right, that's cool. If you guys are out there listening and you have any things you'd like us to gather up our editors and yell at each other about, let us know. Send us a note. Put it on the forums. Cover it in the clubs. Until next week, we are out.